Hello? Get back now on what's that to you, please. I need emergency to the Walmart. 2031, 183. My friend is in her car. And she I don't know, I think she passed out. She's totally red. Right at the Little Caesars.
27-year-old Jessika Kalaher lived in Austin, Texas. After graduating from Texas State University, her life was in full swing. 2 jobs, working towards her master's degree, and always busy socially. She worked at the local grocery store and also as a substitute teacher, but was hoping to soon get a permanent position in an elementary school. She was also saving money for her master's and to get her student loan debts cleared too. Jessika definitely had a lot on her plate and a fair few stresses, but always a glass half full kind of person. She was confident it wouldn't be this way for long. Her family said Jessika once wrote, "Someday everything will make perfect sense. Laugh at the confusion, smile through the tears, and keep reminding yourself that everything happens for a reason." Conscientious, focused, and fun to be around, Jessika was in a really good place and had a lot of things to look forward to. Labor Day, September the 7th, 2009. Jessika was spending the day with her cousin and best friend Melanie, along with a few others. It was a really hot day, so the group was swimming in the pool and using the weather for a nice barbecue. Everyone stayed by the pool for a few hours and then went out to a restaurant. Jessika had work the next day, was trying to save money, and was driving everyone home, so she didn't want to drink more than a couple. After the restaurant closed, the group went to a bar to play some pool. Just after midnight, the group left the bar and Jessika started dropping everyone back home. At 1:30 a.m, Melanie, who was the last person in the car, asked Jessika if she just wanted to stay at hers for the night, but Jessika declined, wanting to make sure she woke up fresh and ready for her shift. She also needed to get some dog food on the way home and check on her pets. She hugged Melanie goodbye and set off for a local Walmart. A few hours later, as people were up and getting ready for work, Melanie's phone rang. It was one of Jessica's colleagues. Jessika was a no-show. Instantly, Melanie was bothered by this. She was never one to even phone in sick, let alone just not turn up. Melanie made a few more calls, but with every person that said they hadn't heard from her, she knew deep down that something had to be wrong. Jessika shared an apartment with Melanie's brother John, but he too was surprised to hear this. John was a police officer and had started his shift at 5:30 a.m. He hadn't seen or heard her in the apartment, but assumed she was sleeping and they just hadn't crossed paths. He drove home and was immediately met with one of her dogs, who was a little distressed. She wasn't home, and it looked as if she hadn't even been home since the previous day. John called his colleagues and reported her missing. He got them to track her phone right away, and it pinged near the intersection of US Highway 183 and Walton Way in Cedar Park. It wasn't a secluded area at all, far from it. There were a lot of businesses there, and at this time of day, a lot of cars and people. Perhaps she had broken down, and her phone had simply died. Melanie and her boyfriend Caesar sped over and spotted her white Kia straight away. It was parked neatly just outside of Little Caesars. They got out and were immediately hit by a horrendous smell coming from her car. Although the windows were rolled up, it was now 90 degrees outside, so it was still very intense. Jessika was inside, slumped in the driver's seat, which was set way further back than it should have been. She wasn't moving. They could see what looked like faces across the inside of the car too. Her car was unlocked, and as soon as they opened it, the smell hit them even more. Melanie touched Jessica's head to try and wake her up, but she still didn't move. Her body was red from sunburn, she had marks all over her, and her hair was wet with sweat. Cesar called 911.
Hello? Get back now on what's that to you, please. I need emergency to the Walmart. 2031, 183. My friend is in her car. And she I don't know, I think she passed out. She's totally red. We're right at the Little Caesars.
Jessika Kalaher had been murdered. There was a ligature mark across her neck and small hemorrhages on and around her eyes, face and neck. She was covered in bruises and scratches too. She had been raped and strangled twice. Once with some sort of cloth, potentially the tie on her dress which she had been wearing over her bathing suit, and strangled another time by someone's hands. The marks on her neck showed that she had clawed back, trying to fight her killer off. There were a lot of scratches on her neck, which had been caused by her own nails. Her wallet, cards and car keys were missing, but her phone was taken in to be looked at. This was a pretty busy and public place, so police started with the restaurants and shops nearby. A restaurant worker said she had arrived early that morning and had seen Jessika alive. She was crawling around naked inside her car, and it seemed like she was trying to put her bathing suit on. She saw her again later, this time wearing her white dress, sitting outside her car playing with her hair. The third and final time she saw her, Jessika was back in the car, talking to herself and doing some odd hand gestures. A couple of other people also saw Jessika and described her as confused and lethargic. No one had spoken to her, but her behavior had definitely looked erratic and strange. The next time anyone saw her, she was dead. Melanie said she was totally sober when she left her, and she didn't take drugs either. This was confirmed when the toxicology results came back, showing there were no signs of drugs, alcohol, or medication in her system whatsoever. Things were starting to get even stranger and more complicated. In the back of her car was a huge bag of dog food. Melanie told police that she was going to pick some up, so they knew it had been purchased that morning. There was a 24-hour Walmart across the road from her car, and sure enough, they saw Jessika on the cameras pulling into the Walmart at 1:45. She entered the store alone, wearing her white dress, a red baseball cap, and carrying her bag over her shoulder. Jessika was walking around inside perfectly fine, definitely not acting erratically, and she wasn't stumbling or struggling either. She didn't stop to talk to anyone, and no one seemed to be watching her. She went straight to the dog food, then to the checkout, and left the store. One of the employees stood by the doors and watched her as she left. But this was where everything changed. Up until this point, no one inside had been following her, but suddenly a tall man in a brown shirt and baseball cap seemed to be hot on her tail. He had been in the Walmart only a few minutes before Jessika, parking up his small truck a good walk away from her car. He used the bathroom inside, and when he left, Jessika had just been in front of him, carrying the big bag of dog food over her shoulder. As Jessika went back outside to her Kia, the man still following her was about 20 seconds behind, and his pace was quickening. Frustratingly, her car was parked right behind a large tree, which completely blocked the view of the cameras. The only other camera that looked at her car was terrible quality, but it was still enough to show the man had walked right up to her car, because he didn't emerge again or come back into view, and his truck remained in its parking spot. About 2 minutes after Jessika and the man reached her car, the car pulled out and drove towards the exit. It was very troubling footage. The cameras inside the Walmart also had a view of Jessica's car from when it was later parked outside the Little Caesars. They followed the person that got out, watching as they crossed the road into the Walmart parking lot. They could now tell it was the same man from earlier, as he got right back into his truck and sped off. At 5:32 a.m., 20 minutes after her car parked outside the Little Caesars, her bank card was used at an Exxon gas station, and it was the same man from Walmart. Jessika did not leave her car. It stayed stationary from 2:50 a.m. until she was found. But because a couple of employees saw her, she had to have been alive up until that point, which was a good few hours. Things were just not making sense. Investigators released part of the tapes and put out a bee on the lookout for the red pickup truck. Now, all they could do was wait for someone to call in. While police carried on with their searches, Jessica's funeral was held. Her family said this was the first time they actually learned she had been strangled. They could see the marks around her neck. This made an already painful day so much more devastating. Who could have done this to her, and why? To the detectives' surprise, they got a call about the truck from a woman called Leslie. Her fiancé was best friends with the man she believed owned the vehicle, 37-year-old Crispin Harmel. A few hours before Jessika was found, Leslie said Crispin was supposed to come to their apartment to drop off some money he owed, but he never showed up. And this struck her as odd. She couldn't shake the bad feeling she had and needed to get it off her chest. Crispin was like family, and it was hard to make a call like that, but at the same time, a young girl had lost her life. They ran his name through the system and found that he had been pulled over for having an expired registration just 3 weeks earlier. Police had their body cams on at the time and could see he was driving the same truck, and even wearing the same baseball cap. This was definitely the person they were looking for. 5 days after Jessika was found dead, police knocked on Crispin's door for an interview. It was clear that he had changed the appearance of the truck. Certain parts that were once silver were now painted black. Crispin did not seem surprised that they were there and admitted to knowing Jessika. He claimed he had arranged to meet her through a website called Lonely Housewife Hookups. They spoke over Messenger and agreed to meet at the Walmart between 12:30 and 1 a.m. on the morning she was killed. Crispin said he and Jessika drove away in her car and the pair had sex near a park. He had been in her car and could have been one of the last people to see her alive. But this didn't mean he was a killer. Police didn't say anything. But they already knew the tapes told a very different story. Crispin and Jessika had arrived at Walmart separately and did not interact or even acknowledge each other before he got into her car. Her behavior when she arrived at the Walmart suggested she was not there to meet anyone either. She was there for dog food, and that was it. It was clear there was absolutely no kind of relationship between the two of them, and his story had instantly fallen flat. He then said she drove him back to Walmart, and they chatted for a minute in her car. He told her about his money troubles, saying he was struggling to pay for gas. So she offered him her debit card and wrote the PIN number on his hand. The next day, when he learned that Jessika was dead, he said to himself, "I was just with this girl and she's dead. It's strange for it to happen." In a panic, he threw away her debit card and changed his truck's appearance because he didn't want anyone to think he was involved. He said everything with such confidence. But police knew it was the most convoluted story. Melanie and her friends said Jessika made no mention of going to meet anyone that night. She was not only a very open book, but she was the type of person who, if she was meeting someone she didn't know that late at night, would have made sure everyone knew where she was going and who the person was. A detailed examination of both of their computers and phones showed there was never a single conversation between the pair, nor had Jessika ever visited the website he mentioned. What was clear, though, is that just a few hours after she was found dead, he had been searching her name and looking up images and articles about her. Police believed that Crispin had followed her outside, forced himself into her car, made her drive to a park, sexually assaulted and strangled her twice, before driving her car back to the parking lot, leaving her for dead and stealing her card. The second the detectives mentioned what they had seen on the cameras, Crispin asked for a lawyer and went silent. Police knew this had to be Jessika's killer, but they still couldn't work out what had happened between him parking her car and her being found dead. He hadn't returned to her, and no one else had been near her car either. Nothing was self-inflicted, but she was still alive long after Crispin had left the scene. It was a scene of total confusion. They did not have enough evidence to charge him with murder at this point, but they did have enough to charge him with tampering with evidence. In May 2010, after pleading guilty, he was sentenced to 10 years. Authorities kept the murder case open and went back through everything again and again. Finally, they found something that would start to give them some answers. Detectives came across an interesting article written by an Indiana University School of Medicine professor about people who were strangled but would then suffocate hours later from the effect of the strangulation. It was not an instant or quick death. It could actually be drawn out over many hours. This is known as delayed death due to strangulation. Experts said this could easily explain why she was acting so strangely outside of her car, and the feces inside the car too. She had been so brain damaged by being strangled twice that she had no idea what was going on or where she was. She was unable to ask for help or use her phone, and this, coupled with heat stroke from lying in the hot sun for so long, meant she was in a totally fatal situation. Dr. Bill Smock, a doctor of forensic medicine, said, "You go unconscious first, and that's because your brain isn't getting enough oxygenated blood. Then you may have a seizure. Then, at a minimum of 15 seconds, your brain cells are dying. The first thing you lose is control of your bladder, then you lose control of your rectal sphincter. The last part of our brain to die is our brain stem, the part that controls our breathing and our heartbeat. But above that in the brain are things like personality and memory." It was clear that Crispin had strangled her twice to the point he thought she was dead, but she was actually unconscious. Knowing his intention was definitely to kill her, and having so much science behind them, finally, in May 2013, he was indicted for capital murder. He pleaded not guilty.
An expert on strangulation testified in a Williamson County murder trial today. The doctor testified that he agrees with the medical examiner's findings that Jessika Kalaher died as a result of strangulation. Crispin Harmel is accused of killing the 27-year-old. Witnesses saw Kalaher alive hours after she was strangled in her hot car, acting strangely. Dr. Bill Smock says it's because she was attacked.
So this case, I think we have two explanations as to why Jessica's behavior was abnormal. One, brain damage from strangulation, and number two, heat.
The defense cross-examined Dr. Smock using his own testimony, saying if someone was strangled, their reaction would be to dig their nails into the attacker, which would likely collect the attacker's DNA under their fingernails. There's no DNA linking Kayler and Harmel.
The defense felt good about their case. But given how hot it was that day, this wasn't entirely surprising. Experts said extreme heat and humidity can degrade DNA much quicker, and it was unlikely that anything would have been found on her body. The prosecution weren't worried. The amount of evidence literally caught on tape was damning enough. There was no other person that could have done this to her. The state called Elizabeth, Crispin's former girlfriend. She testified that he had told her his apartment had burned down and he had lost his phone in the fire. The truth was his phone had been taken as part of the investigation. He also told her his truck had broken down. But again, it had been seized. To everyone's frustration, it ended in a mistrial after the prosecutors were accused of withholding evidence. It was back to square one for everybody. DA Jana Duty was later sent to jail for violating a gag order and was sanctioned by the State Bar of Texas for professional misconduct. A few years later, she would be found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Details of a 2009 Cedar Park murder case will be heard again this week in a Williamson County courtroom.
Crispin Harmel is being retried in the death.
In the spring of 2018, Crispin's second trial started. It had now been almost 10 years since Jessica was killed.
Williamson County jury watched a 2009 suspect interrogation in a murder trial out of Cedar Park today.
The jury watched the second interview Cedar Park police had with Harmel after they say they found holes in his story. KXAN's Lauren Kravitz has more.
The primary concern after our investigation was moving forward was that many things were just not adding up.
For a third day, Sergeant Bond, who investigated Jessika Kalaher's murder, testified he had a list of concerns after his first interview with Crispin Harmel. In a follow-up video interview, Harmel said Kalaher drove them back to the shopping center near Walmart after they had consensual sex. But Bond said that didn't make sense.
The seat itself was pushed all the way back on the rails, and her feet could not touch the gas and brakes.
Harmel also said Kalaher started up her car as he was walking back to his truck.
I remember seeing like a lights flash or whatever, headlights or whatever.
But surveillance video never shows the lights turn on or Kalaher's car leave. In fact, Kalaher's car keys were not in the car and never found. Harmel also said Kalaher lent him her debit card to get gas, but he threw it away once he saw police were looking for him.
Generally speaking, when people either change something or get rid of something, it's because they don't want it to be located in or on their person, which means they want to disassociate with that particular item.
And that was Lauren Kravitz reporting. The defense started to cross-examine Sergeant Bond late this afternoon. One of the things that they argued was that neither Harmel nor Kalaher would have looked for each other inside Walmart because the plan was to meet at her car. Prosecutors argued that neither of them were looking for each other at the time that Harmel said they were supposed to meet.
In other news tonight, a jury found a man guilty of killing a woman in Cedar Park in 2009. Crispin Harmel is convicted of kidnapping, raping, and strangling her. The judge sentenced Harmel to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This time, the jury found Crispin Harmel guilty of capital murder. As prosecutors did not seek the death penalty, he was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2020, he appealed against his conviction, but it was upheld. He remains locked up with the same sentence to serve. Jessica had had a wonderful evening with her friends. As she walked back to her car that morning, she was ready to go home, feed her dogs, get up, and just go to work. Her master's degree was within reaching distance, and she had so much ready and waiting for her. Jessica's cousin John said he really hoped there would be some sense of relief, knowing he was caught and locked up. But it didn't happen, because it didn't change anything. He still gets to live, and Jessica doesn't. Her dad said, "So much was snatched away that day. He took away my opportunity to walk her down the aisle. She would have been a great mother, I know it. I miss her a lot." Melanie says that as with all loss, some days are easier than others, but good memories will often be ripped away because of what she saw in that parking lot. No day will ever feel completely whole again. Something will always be missing.